According to my watch, it's 1,000 o'clock.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Mind and More, where we talk about anything that comes to mind and more. When I'm watching TV shows, I sometimes think about things like how the characters make a living, what kind of car they drive, where they live, just out of curiosity, And also because I want to know how much I can relate to any of them. So because of my curiosity, I decided to gather this information about the characters from the sitcom community. I want to be really nosy, give a breakdown of all the details about what they do for a living, their income, the neighborhoods they live in, what kind of car they drive, their lifestyles basically. Just piecing together all the details to come up with a bigger picture. Just so it's easier for me to understand when it comes to salaries or income, I'm going to provide the figures as if the characters were working or living in the 2010s. The lifestyles I'll go through are those of Jeff, Britta, Shirley, Troy, Annie, Abed, Pierce, Chang, and The Dean. I hope you're ready because this should be fun. Sit tight and let's go. To give context, all of these people live in Colorado, United States, and all of them attend Greendale Community College. So to start us off, we have Jeff. Jeff is this guy who thinks he's stylish. He cares about image and his looks, so I'm pretty sure he used to spend a lot on that. The job he first had before he came to Greendale was he was a lawyer, and he worked for a big firm. And for this kind of job, he'll be making about $160,000 on average. On average, a lawyer in Colorado would make about $160,000, which is pretty good. I would be just living my life. And he had a luxury apartment, a nice car, a Lexus. And then when he became a student in Greendale, I'm pretty sure he was now living on his savings, maybe. Or he probably had investments or assets. He probably was pretty, pretty comfortable from his days as a big shot lawyer. He probably was just living on that money. And then after a while, after several years of being at Greendale, when he finally got his degree, he became a teacher at Greendale. And for this, you can expect he was making about $65,000. We also got to see his apartment on one of the Christmas episodes. I think this was the Christmas episode in season 4. He had this nice apartment. I liked it. Pretty spacious. It's something I would love for myself. We got to see the kitchen and the living room only. I wish we'd gotten to see his bedroom, but it seemed like a really nice apartment. Next, we have Britta, who is the exact opposite of Jeff. She is not bothered with material things, and she's anti-institution. For most of her life, she spent it as an anarchist. And then after that, when she started attending Greendale Community College, she became a bartender. And you should expect that in the state she lives in, she makes about $30,000 to $60,000 a year. But I would place her on the lower end because at some point in season 4, I think it was season 3 or season 4, during Abed's birthday episode, we got to hear that she doesn't make much from tips, so I'd place her on the lower end of this range. She then, in later seasons, also worked as a till operator at Shirley's Sandwiches. And in terms of where she was living, for the most part, she was a couch surfer. I think that's how she got by during her anarchist days. And then afterwards, in season 5, she started sharing an apartment with Abed and Annie. The apartment was actually being secretly subsidized by her parents. And as for her car, she drives a hatchback. I am a big fan of hatchbacks because they fit anywhere. You can just drive so easily, park it anywhere. I just love a hatchback. They're also very cute. Next, we have Annie. Annie is just a normal late teens to early 20s girl who's ambitious and focused. So when we first see her, we don't really know what she does or how she's paying for school. I assume maybe she got a scholarship or she had funding or something. But anyway, in the second season, that's when we got to see what she does for a living. She was recycling cans, which is about 50 cents per pound of material, which is not a lot. But she was also living on her savings. That's what she said in season 2. She said she got money from the Tooth Fairy and the Period Fairy, if anyone's ever heard of that. But yeah, and on top of that, she was also selling her eggs, which makes you good money because you can make about 10,000 from my research. You can make about 10,000 per cycle. In season 5, she ended up in pharmaceutical sales, which should make you about 75,000 per year. By the way, all of the figures I'm giving are annual income. So when I say 75,000, I'm talking about 75,000 a year. And then finally, the last job we saw her do was she went for an FBI internship, and I don't know what she would make from that. It was just for the summer, so I'm not sure how much she was making. Where she lived in this studio in a dangerous neighborhood. I never saw anything dangerous happen, but she always used to say her neighborhood was dangerous. But eventually she did move out of that neighborhood and into an apartment with Abed and Troy. And for her car, she used to drive another hatchback. I love me a hatchback, like I said. So that's it for Annie. Let's move on to Troy. Troy is this jock turned goofball, but overall a regular kid. He starts off as a student at Greendale, and I think at this point he wasn't working, but he was probably being supported by his family. At some point during season 1, his dad asks him to leave, and that's when he ends up living or sharing a house, rather sharing a mansion with Pierce. And over the course of the show, he then ends up living with Abed and eventually with both Abed and Annie. But this didn't last long. He then inherited millions of dollars from Pierce and he became a millionaire traveler cruising around the world. Oof. Now this is my kind of life. I wish some old guy would just leave me an inheritance of millions of dollars. This is pretty impossible for me anyway because I don't have any millionaire friends. But anyway, I don't know what kind of car Troy drives. We didn't get to see that. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more stuff like this, why not just subscribe? Next we have Abed, who's a film nerd who probably spends a lot on his large film and comics collection. So if Jeff spends a lot on how he looks, his clothes and all that, Abed is spending a lot on comic books and films. Throughout the time we know Abed, he's a student. He's probably being supported by his family because I never really heard about him going for work, or I never really heard about any of his jobs or anything of the sort. And I'm pretty sure they were taking care of him good because he gets enough for his films and comics. Like, he has a massive collection. At first he was living in college accommodation, and then he moved into the shared apartment with Troy and eventually with both Troy and Annie. And for his car, unfortunately, I never got to see what kind of a car Abed drives, or if he has a car. That wasn't information we got to see on screen. Let's move on to Shirley. Now, Shirley is religious. She's this religious stay-at-home mom. She's not trying to be a baller. She's about God and her family. So she's a stay-at-home mom for the first few seasons, and I'm not sure if she had anything she was doing on the side, but she then does become a business owner in later seasons, and you can expect that for the kind of business she had, she was making about 4,000 net a month. She was taking about 4,000 home, and her business was doing pretty well before she tried expanding it, and it didn't do so well after trying to expand. In the last season that we saw her, she was a private chef and she was making about $80,000 a year, because those are average figures for a private chef in her state. And in terms of her home, she had a home in the suburbs. We saw it in a Thanksgiving episode. I think this was either season 3 or season 4. We didn't really get to see much of it, to be honest. And if you're wondering about her car, in the first season, she was sharing a minivan with her ex. This was way back when the ex was still with his new girlfriend or wife or whatever was going on then. They were still sharing a minivan, but I'm not sure what ended up happening afterwards. Maybe they continued sharing until they eventually got back together, or maybe she got her own car. I don't know, but they eventually got divorced again, which is wild. The whole story is wild. I've talked about this before, how their love story drove me mad. But anyway, now let's go on to Pierce. Pierce is this rich out of touch millionaire. He's an heir of a global, I assume, wipes business. He's a millionaire. He is rich. He lives in a creepy mansion called the Hawthorne Manor. And in terms of what he drives, I'm not sure. We did get to see him inside his car when he was in season 2 when he was stalking Annie, but I'm not sure what it looked like on the outside. But it's probably a luxury vehicle. I mean, what do you expect from Pierce and all his millions of dollars? But there's not much to say here. The guy was rich. He was filthy rich. So let's go on to more interesting stuff. Let's talk about Chang. So Chang is Chang, and Chang being Chang, he had a million different jobs. Before he came to Greendale to work as a Spanish teacher, he was a supermarket worker, and in his state that makes him maybe about $40,000 a year. As a Spanish teacher, he was making about $65,000. As a Spanish teacher at a community college in his state, that is, he was making about $65,000. He was then also a student, not sure whether he had an extra job, what he was doing at that point. Maybe I don't know, maybe he was getting maintenance from his ex-wife, I don't know. But afterwards, he became a security guard, which makes you about $40,000 as well, similar to the supermarket worker job. Then later in season 3, he became a dictator at a community college. Who knows how much exactly that makes you? I have no clue how much you can make from being a dictator at a community college. And similar to the Spanish teacher job, he was maybe making about $60,000 or $65,000 a year. And lastly, he was also a famous actor at some point. I don't know how much he was making, but he was everywhere. He was all over the internet, all over the TV. He was probably doing good for himself and making good money. Talking about where he lived in different places. At first, he was living with his wife, not sure where exactly. We never got to see his house or his neighborhood. And then for some time, he was living in the Greendale College air vents. He then also was moved into a supplies closet at Greendale during his time as a security guard, which was not supposed to happen, by the way. The dean was not supposed to do this, but they had a little secret arrangement where he was working for room and board. Wait, so that means he actually wasn't making the $40,000 I said before. So scratch that. He was just working as a security guard for room and board. And then after all of this, I have no clue where he was living, and I also have no clue what kind of car he drove. But it's expected. I don't expect to know much about Chang because Chang is a mysterious guy. You never really know what he's truly up to or what he's gonna do next. So anyway, let's move on to our last person, the Dean, Dean Pelton.
I don't know what that was.
The Dean is also another mysterious person in that it's a mystery where he gets all of the money he has, because he seems to have lots of money and lots of time to spare. I mean, he has enough money to buy hundreds of outfits that can only be worn once, or not at all, actually. I mean, some of these things I'm like, did he actually go out in public like this? But his job, we all know what his job is. He's a community college dean, and that's the job we know him for throughout the run of the show. And this should make him about $120,000 a year in his state. He lives in Jeff's apartment building, but prior to this, I'm not sure where he was staying because he only moves into Jeff's apartment building later on in the show. And I think it's because he specifically wanted to be around Jeff or to basically stalk Jeff. But before that, I don't know where he was staying. And for his car, he drove this eco-friendly Toyota Prius in earlier seasons, but in season 6, he bought a Honda on a whim. He had a Honda advertised to him and he's like, you know what? Yes, I'm gonna buy it. So he really had lots of money to spare. So that was the Dean. And that was everybody, all of the main characters in Community, their lifestyles, the kind of neighborhoods they were living in, the cars they were driving, money they were making. Is there anything that surprised you here? Do you think I'm right in my estimates in terms of income, or am I a little bit off? What's your take?